The fluorescent lights of Y-Tech Industries' boardroom cast harsh shadows across my brother Michael's face as he delivered what he thought was my career's death sentence. As CFO, I recommend immediate termination, he announced, clicking to the next slide. Jessica Wei's performance as financial controller has been consistently substandard. Her methods are foreign to our established practices. I sat quietly, watching the board members nod along. 7 years of working my way up through the company our parents built, and my own brother was orchestrating my downfall. All because I asked too many questions about our creative accounting practices. I'm Jessica Wei, and this is the story of how my brother's attempt to discredit me led to the exposure of one of the largest family business frauds in Seattle's history. Furthermore, Michael continued, straightening his custom-made suit, her educational background is questionable. An MBA from Beijing Business School hardly compares to American credentials. That drew knowing chuckles from several board members. Never mind that Beijing Business School was Asia's top business institution, or that I graduated first in my class. To them, I was just the younger sister who'd studied in China while Michael got his MBA from Stanford. Perhaps, our father, CEO James Wei, spoke up, Jessica would be better suited to our Asian operations. I met his eyes across the table. Dad had always favored Michael, the firstborn son who perfectly embraced American corporate culture. When I chose to study in China, hoping to help expand our tech company into Asian markets, he called it a step backward. Actually, I said, opening my laptop, I've prepared my own presentation. Michael's smile faltered slightly. This isn't necessary. According to company bylaws, any employee facing termination has the right to respond to allegations. I stood connecting my laptop to the projector. I'd like to exercise that right. The screen filled with a complex financial diagram, one I'd spent 6 months creating, working late nights after everyone had left the office. What you're looking at is a comprehensive analysis of Y-Tech's financial transactions over the past 7 years. Notice anything unusual about these payment patterns? Board members leaned forward, squinting at the intricate web of transactions I'd mapped out. Michael's face had lost some of its color. This is irrelevant, he cut in. We're here to discuss your performance. We're here to discuss numbers, I corrected him. That's what financial controllers do. We look at numbers, patterns, irregularities. Like these recurring payments to Shell Corporation Limited. I clicked to the next slide. A company that, interestingly enough, was registered in the Cayman Islands on the exact same day my brother was appointed CFO. The room fell silent. Michael's hand tightened on his presentation remote until his knuckles turned white. Or these consulting fees, I continued, highlighting another series of transactions. Always just under the threshold requiring board approval, paid to various entities that all trace back to the same offshore account. Enough. Michael slammed his hand on the table. This is a desperate attempt by a failed employee to deflect from her own incompetence. Is it? I pulled up another document. Because according to my analysis, over $50 million has disappeared through these channels since you became CFO. Money that shareholders think is being invested in R&D but is actually flowing through a complex network of shell companies. Dad's face had turned ashen. Michael. She's lying, my brother snapped. She's always been jealous of my success. Her foreign education has made her paranoid about American business practices. I smiled slightly. Actually, my foreign education included extensive study of international money laundering techniques. Beijing Business School has an entire department dedicated to forensic accounting and fraud detection. Very useful in today's global market. That's when Thomas Chen, our longest-serving board member, spoke up. These allegations are serious. We need to halt these proceedings and conduct a thorough investigation. I agree, I said, inserting a flash drive into my laptop, which is why I've prepared copies of my complete findings for each board member, including documentation of every suspicious transaction, timeline of events, and links to all associated shell companies. Michael stood up so quickly his chair fell backward. This is slander. Dad, you can't let her. Sit down, Michael. Our father's voice was quiet but firm. He turned to me, really looking at me perhaps for the first time since I'd returned from China. How long have you known? I suspected something when I first returned 2 years ago. The numbers didn't add up, but it took time to gather evidence to understand the full scope of the fraud. Why didn't you come to me sooner? I met his gaze steadily. Would you have believed me over Michael? The silence that followed was answer enough. I've also prepared a copy for the SEC, I continued. Their forensic accounting team will find my analysis quite thorough. Unless what? Michael's voice cracked slightly. Unless we handle this internally, restructure the company, install proper oversight, return the misappropriated funds. It won't be easy, but it would be better than federal indictments. Thomas Chen nodded approvingly. A chance to clean house without destroying the company's reputation. Wise. Dad looked between his two children. The son he'd always trusted and the daughter he'd underestimated. The board needs to discuss this privately. Both of you wait outside. In the hallway, Michael grabbed my arm. You have no idea what you've done. I pulled away calmly. Actually, I know exactly what I've done. I've protected our family's company from your greed. The question is, do you know what you've done? I built this company into what it is today. No, I corrected him. You stole from it. There's a difference. Mom and Dad built this company. You just exploited their trust. His face twisted with rage. They'll never believe you over me. I'm the son, the Stanford graduate, the American success story. I smiled sadly. Numbers don't care about any of that, Michael. Numbers only tell the truth. That's why accounting is the same in every language. The boardroom door opened. Dad's secretary emerged. The board would like to see Ms. Wei. Alone. As I walked back into the room, I touched the jade pendant Mom had given me before she passed away. Always honor truth above success, she'd said. Success without integrity is just failure in disguise. Looking at the grim faces of the board members, I knew the next few hours would change everything. For the company, for my family, and for the legacy my parents had built. Sometimes the hardest frauds to uncover are the ones hidden in plain sight, protected by trust and family loyalty. But as I'd learned at Beijing Business School, the truth always hides in the numbers. And numbers never lie. The next 48 hours at Tech Industries were a whirlwind of emergency meetings, hurried phone calls, and shocking revelations. The board have voted unanimously to suspend Michael pending a full investigation, and I found myself temporarily appointed as acting CFO. The forensic auditors will arrive tomorrow, Thomas Chen informed me late Friday evening. Your brother's access to all systems has been revoked. I nodded, studying the preliminary reports scattered across my new office, Michael's old office. What about the overseas accounts? Frozen, but some funds are still unaccounted for. I touched Mom's jade pendant, a habit I developed when facing difficult decisions. Have you heard from him? Not since he stormed out of the building. Thomas hesitated. Your father wants to see you. Dad was still in his office, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Family photos lined his desk. Mom's graduation from business school, Michael and me as kids playing in the company's first office, the grand opening of our Seattle headquarters. Did I fail as a father? He asked quietly as I sat down. Dad? No, let me finish. He picked up a photo of Michael receiving his Stanford MBA. I was so proud of him. Following in my footsteps, embracing everything I thought was important. Maybe if I paid more attention. This isn't your fault, I said firmly. Michael made his choices, and I made mine. He set down the photo and picked up another. Me at my Beijing Business School graduation, Mom beaming beside me. Your mother knew, you know, not about the fraud, but about you. She always said you had her eye for details, her commitment to doing things right. Tears pricked at my eyes. Mom had passed away just months after my graduation, before I could prove myself at the company. The board wants to make your CFO position permanent, Dad continued. But we need to handle this situation carefully, the company's reputation. I have a plan, I said, pulling out my laptop. But you might not like all of it. Over the next hour, I outlined my strategy. Full disclosure to major shareholders, transparent cooperation with auditors, and a complete restructuring of our financial controls. We take a hit in the short term, but maintaining trust was crucial for long-term survival. There's more, I added, pulling up another document. I've identified several legitimate opportunities in the Asian market that Michael ignored. We can offset some of our losses by expanding properly ethically. Dad studied the projections. Using your connections from Beijing Business School? and my understanding of both business cultures. We don't have to choose between American and Asian business practices. We can combine the best of both. The next morning, as the forensic auditors began their work, Michael finally surfaced through his lawyer. He's offering to resign quietly in exchange for immunity from prosecution, our corporate counsel reported. No deal, I said immediately. He needs to return the funds first. Miss Wei, the lawyer cautioned, a public scandal could severely damage the company. So could letting him walk away with stolen money. Our shareholders deserve better. That afternoon we received another shock. Someone, almost certainly Michael, had leaked selective details to the press, trying to spin the story as a family coup orchestrated by the foreign-educated sister. I was leaving a shareholder call when Dad's secretary rushed in. Your brother's wife is here with your niece. Sarah, Michael's wife, looked terrible. 60-year-old Amy clung to her hand. He's gone, Sarah said without preamble. Cleaned out our accounts and disappeared. Left a note saying he had a backup plan. My blood ran cold. When? Last night. I thought, I didn't know where else to go. I hugged Amy, then pulled out my phone. Thomas, we need to check all backup servers. Now, my instincts were right. We found a sophisticated program buried in our systems, set to delete crucial financial records if triggered remotely. Michael's insurance policy. Can we stop it? Dad asked our IT team. Already done, I said, showing them the countermeasures I quietly installed months ago. Beijing Business School has an excellent cybersecurity program. The next week was a blur of SEC interviews, shareholder meetings, and damage control. But slowly, a new picture of YTech began to emerge, one of transparency, ethical governance, and renewed purpose. We took a stock hit when the full story broke, but our immediate disclosure and clear plan for reform helped maintain investor confidence. My connections in Asia proved invaluable as we pursued legitimate expansion opportunities. Sarah filed for divorce, and we made sure she and Amy were protected financially. Dad insisted they keep their home, saying, they're still family. 3 months after that fateful board meeting, we received word that Michael had been arrested in Malaysia. He tried to access one of his hidden accounts and triggered an Interpol alert. What do you want to do? Dad asked me. I thought about Mom's words. Success without integrity is just failure in disguise. We cooperate fully with prosecution, I said. But we also make sure Amy has a college fund and Sarah can restart her career. He nodded, understanding. Balance justice with mercy. 6 months later, YTech had not only recovered but was thriving. Our new Asian partnerships were exceeding projections, and our reformed corporate governance was being hailed as a model for family-owned businesses. I was working late one evening when Dad brought me coffee, a peace offering that had become our new tradition. You remind me so much of your mother, he said, watching me review quarterly reports. She always said numbers tell stories if you know how to listen. That's why she encouraged me to study in Beijing, I replied. She knew I needed to learn different ways of listening. He picked up the family photo I kept on my desk, taken at Mom's last birthday, all of us smiling, unaware of what lay ahead. I was wrong, he said quietly, about so many things. Your education, your abilities, your judgment. Dad, you don't have to. Yes, I do, he set down the photo. You saved this company, not just from the fraud, but from its own biases. We needed your perspective, your different way of seeing things. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand that. The next day, I visited Michael in prison. He looked smaller somehow, his expensive suit replaced by standard issue clothes. Come to gloat? He asked bitterly. No, came to show you these. I spread out photos of Amy's recent birthday party, her first without him. She misses you. His hands trembled as he touched the photos. Sarah won't let me see her. That's her choice. But Amy has a college fund waiting. When you get out, there might be a place for you too. Not in finance, obviously, but somewhere you can rebuild. Why would you do that? I touched Mom's pendant, because that's what Mom would have done. Balance justice with mercy, remember? Today, YTech Industries is a different company than it was a year ago. Our board is more diverse, our operations more transparent, our success more sustainable. We've proved that ethical business can also be profitable business. Last week, a young intern asked me how I found the courage to expose the fraud. It wasn't courage, I told her. It was obligation. To the truth, to our shareholders, to my mother's memory. Numbers don't care about family loyalty or cultural biases. They only care about being right. She nodded thoughtfully. Is that what they taught you in Beijing? They taught me something more important, that true success isn't about where you learned, but how you apply what you learned. Looking out from my office at the Seattle skyline, I often think about how different things might have been if Michael had succeeded in discrediting me. If I hadn't had the training to spot his fraud. If I hadn't had Mom's voice in my head, reminding me that integrity matters more than success. Dad still brings me coffee in the evenings, and we talk about Mom, about business, about healing. Amy visits the office sometimes, brightening our days with her questions about everything. Sarah started her own consulting firm, stronger for having survived her own betrayal. And Michael? He's serving his time, attending therapy, writing letters to Amy that Sarah carefully screens. Maybe someday he'll understand that his greatest fraud wasn't stealing money, it was stealing trust. As for me, I keep Mom's jade pendant close and her wisdom closer. Success without integrity is just failure in disguise. It's become Y-Tech's unofficial motto. A reminder that doing things right matters more than doing them the expected way. Sometimes the best validation doesn't come from proving others wrong, but from proving your mother right.